we're going to talk about is who is our Heisman top three. I know we said top three, but once I started looking at it, I had four in mind um, that I thought are Heisman guys. First and foremost, a guy that a lot of people have already talked about. I got Travis Hunter at number one because he's great on offense. He's great on defense. How often do you get that? I mean, the Heisman should be the most outstanding player.
Good God, Travis Hunter, number one for you right now. Okay, all right, sell me.
And hear me out. Here's the thing. All right, you have a quarterback that plays amazing. Let's look. Cam Ward. Cam Ward's going to play great, but you guys, we all three know that playing offense and defense and being great at both is very hard. How often have we played with somebody that can both play offense and defense at the same level? I mean, and at the top tier. I mean, he is good on offense. He's not just good. He's great at offense. He's great at defense. So I think that's more valuable to a team than, let's say, you have Dylan Gabriel. Yes, he is going to be a great offensive power, but why not have a guy that he could throw in on offense and defense? I mean, at the NFL level, we probably won't use him to that extent. Right off the bat, like I said, I got Travis Hunter, and as of now, I don't think it's a question that he's the number one guy.
Well, let's talk. Before we advance a little bit on this, we got to talk about it a little bit because, you are correct, Dave. I do want to talk about how I said earlier in the show, I do think he is the most talented player in the country. So I do agree with you on that for sure. I guess my biggest question here is, let's say Colorado, ends up 5-7. Do you still think he can truly get his name in conversations at a 5-7 Colorado record? I mean, that I think it's my biggest concern for him. I think if he was on a better team, I really think you are 100% correct. This wouldn't be a conversation. I think we would just know that, hey, Travis Hunter's going to go ahead and win this thing start to finish. So I guess my question for you is, if they wrap it up at 5-7, do you still think he could be the number one on the board?
I think for me, if you are the committee deciding on the Heisman, and if he's playing great, I mean, even if they finish 5-7, if he's playing great in both offense and the defense, and he's putting up the numbers, I think he still can be the Heisman. But again, that's saying he has a phenomenal offense and defense throughout the whole year. But if he doesn't do anything other than phenomenal, no, I don't think he's in the Heisman running. But that's what kind of leads me into my number two. My number two guy is Quinn Ewers. He has been playing great. He's getting out of the pocket well. When he is in the pocket, he knows how to work that pocket very well. But again, he is on a very good Texas team. So I think that helps his stock a lot because even though if he's, not, he doesn't have to be phenomenal. He just has to be really good. And that's a big difference. So I think if he just plays really good, he's got a better chance because Texas will probably at least make it to those last four teams, I think, if not win it all. So that's why I have Quinn Ewers at number two. And then next up, truthfully, I've got Dylan Raiola. I mean, I was very impressed with him at Nebraska. And again, Nebraska, isn't playing anybody crazy, but they do have some pretty good teams. They've got Ohio State, they've got USC, so they've got some good teams. So I think if Dylan Raiola plays out the rest of the season really well, I mean, let's say they go undefeated because I don't know how good USC is up to date. So I think their hardest team is Ohio State. So if they compete with Ohio State or beat them and he performs well all year round, I think he's in. I don't think he'll win it, but I think he's got to be in that talk about it. But then at my number four, I've got Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward is a great quarterback. We're all about winning here. So those are my top four. Do you guys have any of those in your top three, or did you end up having top four as well?
Yeah, for me, Dave, real quick, I want to talk about the Dylan Raiola thing. I don't think that's a far stretch. I don't think it's too bold. I do think he can have his name in this conversation. And to your point, I do think at this point, I think his name has been mentioned a little bit. You're probably not the only one out there having him in their top 3 or 4. He's going to have to play extremely, extremely well in the big games that are on his schedule, though, to catapult him into that conversation. The Ohio State game, the USC game, they play at Iowa to wrap their season up, I think. Yeah, at Iowa's their last game of the season. You're going to have to play really good against the Iowa defense like that, really showcase your skills, especially as a freshman and at this Nebraska team. Yeah, Dave, if they find themselves, 10-2, 11-1, somehow 12-0, I don't think 12-0 is possible. I really don't think 11-1 is possible. But yeah, if they find their way in double-digit wins and Dylan Raiola is leading this team to the promised land, I 100% think you are correct. You seem extremely early now, but hey, we may all look back in 6, 7, 8 weeks and be like, wow, they was really on the ball here with this Dylan Raiola pick, and this really does have some traction. But yeah, Brian, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you. You know, you're new to the show for us. You're going to be a staple here for us. I'm going to kick it over to you. You know, give the new guy more conversation first. I'm anxious to see what you got as well. Let's have some good conversation here.
So I'm just gonna say I have four. I had one on the list and I kind of scratched it out. I had four guys in mind, and I kind of went and checked what the updated Vegas odds were, and I was kind of too chalk. I feel like a lot of people are high on Carson Beck, and I just don't see it quite yet. I think he's the name that everybody knows from last season. But my top three are Quinn Ewers is number one. I got Cam Ward number two, and then I have Ashton Genty at number three. And then my honorable mention per se is Jackson Dart. I think Ewers cemented himself as number one this past weekend with that win on the road in Michigan. Cam Ward is playing phenomenal. He was that high end transfer from Washington State that Miami got. He keeps playing like that, like Dave said. He's going to have to play out of his mind just because of the team he's on. But I think he's more than capable of doing that. And I think if you got a running back that has 9 touchdowns in the first 2 games combined, you got to put him up there. So that's why I put him at number 3. And then, like Colin was speaking earlier about Jackson Dart, he's playing, out of his mind. So having more touchdowns than incompletions, I think he deserves to be in the conversation as well.
So I like your top 3, Bryant, but I would switch him up just a little bit. I would swap out Jackson Dart for Ashton Genty. And hear me out. Mm-hmm. All I'm going to say is schedule. I'm going to go ahead and run through Boise State's remaining schedule. They played Oregon, which was their hardest game. They beat Georgia Southern. But then after that, they've got Portland State, Washington State, Utah State, Hawaii, UNLV, San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose State, Wyoming, and Oregon State.
Sounds like this guy's going to run for 2,500 yards to me, Dave. Sounds like he's going to cement himself at the top of this Heisman voting. And before we go any further, because everything you're talking about now can completely relate to me, because me and Bryant have the same top 4. Different order. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out here. I'm going to have a bold hot take here. Ashton Genty is my number 1 Heisman player thus far up to this point. I know
you are on crack, Colin James. No way Ashton Genty wins the Heisman. Absolutely no chance. I mean, there's
459 yards and 9 touchdowns through 2 games, Dave. That's more offense than Colorado had all last week, and you're sitting here trying to sell me on Travis Hunter. You can miss me with that shit. Ashton Genty, 459 yards and 9 touchdowns, cementing his name at the number 1 spot on my Heisman vote. And when he runs for 300 on Portland State this week, he's going to be my number 1 running back again, because he's going to have 12 touchdowns and 700-plus yards. This guy is an absolute machine. Nobody will talk me off this guy of this top spot. If I'm a franchise in the NFL, I'm building around this guy. I don't care what their sayings are about running backs. At number 2, I do have Cam Ward, 689 yards, 6 touchdowns, does have 1 interception. But I'm completely sold on Cam Ward. He's completely restructured this Miami team through 2 games with the big win against Florida. They never had a doubt in that game. He completely shit on Florida's defense. I'm completely sold on Cam Ward. As long as Mario Cristobal stays out of his way, I think we'll also see Cam Ward's name there at the end. At number 3, I do have Jackson Dart. He's at 795 yards and 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's played some lesser opponents, but he's doing exactly what you're supposed to do against those lesser opponents. Like we talked about before, I have, and Brian has, I'm going to talk about it again. He's got more touchdowns and incompletions. Wrap your head around that a little bit. That's an absolute absurd stat to hear out loud. I had to go triple check it, quadruple check it, because I still didn't believe it. It's real. It's a real thing. Jackson Dart's here to have his name in serious Heisman conversation. And yes, I did 4 as well. None of us follow the rules very well. I'm going to go ahead and extend my number 4 to Quinn Ewers. I know everybody you read right now has got him at the top. I totally understand why. I just don't think he's more talented than the 3 guys that I've listed ahead of him. I really don't. He has shown great things. He has really improved and built on what he had last year. The guy is an absolute machine. And if the guy was to get crowned the Heisman winner today, based upon what we've seen so far, after 2 games, I wouldn't fight it. I wouldn't be upset about it. I just think that Michigan win overshadows a lot of great things some of these other guys have done. Quinn Ewers, yes, does have 506 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception, so nothing to scoff at. And what he did against Michigan was impressive. So I don't want to discredit that either. I just am higher on the other three guys, especially Ashton Jeanty. I think it's Ashton Jeanty, space, the next three guys. I really do. That's just me, to each their own.
Hold on. We got to pause here because I'm just going to throw the facts out there. I mean, everything is decided on strength of schedule. College football playoffs are, and I think that should directly apply to the Heisman. Boise State doesn't play anybody. It doesn't matter if he puts up a lot of yards. They're a lesser team. When you have somebody, I think if Ollie Gordon has 2/3 of the stats that Ashton Jeanty has, I think he wins it over Ashton Jeanty, and that's just straight fact because they're playing better team. Let's look at Texas. Let's look at Ole Miss. I mean, they're playing legit teams. Boise State isn't playing anybody. And hear me out. I do think Ashton Jeanty is great. I think he's really good. But I think if we're talking about the best player in the country, it's got to be the best player in the country has got to be somebody that's playing the best teams in the country.
Well, the best part to your take here, Dave, is Ashton Jeanty has played the best opponent on this schedule so far in Oregon. Oregon's the best team of any of these teams that have been played so far. And shall I remind you that he ran for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns on this Oregon Ducks fence. So here we are talking about how we are not sold on these schedules. Dave, he just beat up on Oregon by himself. If Ashton Jeanty wasn't in this game, this would have been a 37-20 shellacking. This would have been 37-14 shellacking. He was the team. He was the offense. I do hear you. I'm all in on stronger opponents. But, yeah, man, he just beat up on a team that you and I had cemented in our top 3 going into this season. Man, this guy's the real deal. You can't talk me out of this. Ashton Jeanty, clear gap than those quarterbacks. It's also going to be extremely hard for him to win this award as a running back. I recognize that. And I do recognize the Boise State take as well. I totally agree with you. But if he keeps doing what he's doing, that's where he separates himself. If he truly can get up, he talked about how he wanted to run for 2,000 plus yards. If he can truly run for 2,000 plus yards, play an opponent like Oregon and run for 192 on them, Dave, he is going to absolutely bully these lesser opponents and get to those milestone numbers.
Hear me out. The only way I see Ashton Jeanty winning the Heisman is if he carries Boise State all the way. They don't lose another game. They get that 12 seed in, and they make a good run in the playoffs. That's the only way I see it happening because then at that point he's proven himself that he can beat, 1 or 2 teams in the top 12. Now that we got fired up about the Heisman, I didn't think it would get that crazy because I kind of figured we were all going to have the same top 4 and agree with them, but clearly not. But
well, hey, before we advance, you brought up a great point. Can a one-loss Boise State team with their one loss being to Oregon by 3 points? Bryant, would you give the edge to an undefeated Liberty or a one-loss Boise State with their one loss being a 3-point loss to Oregon?
I think it depends on what their other games looked like, but off on paper, just from what you just asked me, I think you got to go with Boise State, in my opinion. Because I don't know what Liberty's schedule looks like, but I doubt there's a game like Oregon on their schedule.
Liberty's toughest opponent is App State, and we just saw App State get absolutely walked. They got absolutely boat raced by Clemson and gave up 66 points. So if Liberty goes in and has a close game to an App State, I'm fully ready to commit that Boise State is the better team because I think Boise State has shown a lot, man. They sat there and banged with an Oregon team who we have atop of our list all the way to the finish. So I would much rather see a Boise State team that can hang and bang with the top of the top rather than a Liberty that, you still have the questions of, they're undefeated and I think they can get in here and bang around a little bit. But I think Boise State gives the best game, so I'm going to lean Boise State on that one. Just wanted to see what you had to say there.
Listen, I have been talking about how Boise State's schedule's not strong, but I think if Boise State wins out the rest of the year, even if Liberty goes undefeated, you have to give it to Boise State. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Liberty, crushes everybody this year. If Boise State wins
agree.
Out, they get in.
I agree.
If Boise State wins out, they're in.
They showed enough in this game. They showed enough. I totally agree. I'm sold on that. Before the season started, you probably couldn't have convinced me of that. But man, I was actually at one point convinced that Boise State was going to win this football game. I really was. So yeah, absolutely. they deserve it over an undefeated Liberty. And this is all hypothetical, obviously. Maybe it may not even be Liberty that we're talking about. Maybe Northern Illinois, right? I mean, they just beat Notre Dame. So, I mean, we have plenty of options here, and I love that. I love that we have options for that 12th spot. I think it's awesome that these teams are doing this and stepping up and performing at a higher level. It's made it really fun. It made what looked to be like a boring week 2 a very, very entertaining week 2.
Yeah, this group of 5 teams just have no room for error. So we'll see how they, proceed through the rest of the season.